Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lookout live stream. We've got something going on today. We've got Michael Steinberg in the house.
How's it going, guys? Good to be here. Headquarters for the Lookout.
Yeah, we're headquarters. If you're just joining us for the first time, this is the Lookout podcast, Lookout live stream. And today we've got special episode, but I just want to introduce the Lookout as we normally do. We're coming to you from Chico, California. We broadcast fire intelligence, fire information, fire education, all things wildfire, forestry, and prescribed fire. I'm a pyrogeographer. I went to Chico State for geography before pyrogeography existed. And now you can actually study pyrogeography. So Steinberg here is also a pyrogeographer.
That I am.
And he's using that as a photographer, videographer, and also as a reporter for WatchDuty. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you do with storm chasing and what brought you here?
Yeah. So I go to Chico State. I major in physical and environmental geography, but my focus is in pyrogeography. So basically the geography of fire. I started storm chasing as well my freshman year, so back in 2021 going into 2022.
We got two
audio.
So we got two terrible mic echo.
Uh-oh. Echoing mics.
All right, how about now?
How are we good? How we doing?
Okay. Thanks, Tegan Lee. We're gonna try it. We're gonna start over, just so we have a nice clean version. All right. Welcome to the Lookout. My name is Zeke Lunder, and my audio is echoey. We do wildfire reporting here, forestry reporting, talk about fuels, we really geek out. We're pyrogeographers. And tonight I got a special guest who's pyrogeographer Michael Steinberg. I'm a Chico State alum here, California State University, Chico. But I graduated 28 years ago. Before, we were doing everything on punch cards and with ink pens, and this guy does it all on his phone. So this is Michael Steinberg. Tell us about yourself.
So I'm Michael. I go to Chico State. I major in physical and environmental geography with a focus in pyrogeography. So that is the study of fire. I've been a reporter for the WatchDuty app since we launched statewide back in 2022, and I've been a storm chaser for about that same time as well. So I've been out documenting all these fires ever since. And then especially for tonight with what we're going to talk about with the Palisades fire, that was my kind of first experience documenting and seeing fire behavior down in Southern California, which is very different compared to up here. Let's just say that.
Right. Yeah, so we're going to do kind of the typical Lookout thing where we're going to have maps. We're going to wave our hands over the maps, but we're going to kind of intercut the maps with the evolution of the Palisades fire. Mike was down there within the first few hours of it burning, and he was there as it moved down the hill into Palisades, Pacific Palisades. So we're going to cut back and forth between the maps and between his videos, and then we'll stop the videos once in a while and talk about what we're seeing there. And then we're going to go over and we're going to kind of do an extended tour of the Eaton fire on Wednesday with helmet cam video, right?
Yep. Yeah, so I have a GoPro that I have mounted onto my wildland helmet, basically to just kind of get a good visual of what I am seeing in real time. So back then, last week, which was exactly a week ago actually, you'll be able to see kind of what the Eaton fire was looking like around the early afternoon in Altadena.
Okay, so we're going to start off in Pacific Palisades, and we're going to pull up Google Earth here and just talk about kind of where the fire started and where we're going to be seeing. So these white lines are a little hard to see, but these are the contours of spread of the fire. Fire started up here kind of by Skull Rock, near the Summit neighborhood, and it moved quickly down into this Ridgeview Country Estates. But it was also spreading during that time kind of eastward, jumped through, it kind of went down this canyon, jumped. And so when we start here, we're looking from. Tell us what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so we're kind of at the top of Monument Street, so north of Sunset Boulevard, and we're kind of looking down into that drainage that you see right there in the middle, and then kind of moving up as you look upslope. So that was when we got on scene. My colleague and I, when we got there, probably around I think 3:30 p.m. So yeah.
Okay, so first view, we're looking up here. This first section of video we're going to watch, it shows how quickly the fire spread from up here on the slope down into the neighborhood and immediately into homes. 3:30 p.m. So what were you thinking? This is like right when you first saw it, huh?
Yeah. So, immediately when you, especially when the first part of this video, when you see it, you'll see that plume really rotating, and that's of course a clear indication of extreme fire behavior. And with the downsloping effect of these winds coming in, with it aiming, this whole drainage aiming up towards these homes that you're seeing right here. It was only a matter of time, unfortunately, until the fire arrived into these homes and into this whole neighborhood, unfortunately.
Okay, so just in that time that we've been watching, it was only like 29 minutes from the time that you saw this until it was in the community where you were standing. So you didn't really move.
No, I didn't. Yeah, I did not move at all. I moved maybe a couple 100 feet.
Okay, and then this is the house with the landscaping you're looking at.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's happening here?
Yeah, so I mean, what we're seeing right now is the issues of the lack of defensible space in these neighborhoods. As you can see, all these trees that are right up against the home, all this is just an extension of the wildland. So that first video that you saw with all the brush and the chaparral out there, this is essentially just another form of that. And because of how right up against the homes this vegetation is, it doesn't take much for these homes to ignite. And you can see here like that wood paneling up at the top with right overhanging these trees. It really does not take much for these homes to ignite, unfortunately.
Okay, and so it immediately jumped to the next home?
Yes, yeah. So you can see this home here as well is densely packed. You can actually see in the gutter right there embers that got in. So that area right up there.
Okay.
So that is, again, one of these things with home hardening, the problem with having exposed gutter systems, and that is one of the issues. And especially even if for homeowners that are taking care of their homes, they're hardening it, and they're clearing out debris. With the winds that came in with this wind event, the Santa Ana wind event, it would throw in more debris, more leaves, more pine needles, wherever, and you already are back to square one again.
Mm-hmm. All right, so this house we're watching burning right here is up here at the top of Monument, right?
Yes.
Okay. So as you come down Monument, the vegetation loads here are just, we've been jumping around kind of in Google Street View just to look at, sorry, there's a little studio repair here. Just the continuity here of the vegetation and the fuel being kind of one seamless fuel type. And same here. These are all really flammable types of vegetation, and this is the same home. So now this is about an hour and a half later.
Yes, yeah. So right nearing the 6 p.m. hour.
Okay, and this is quite a ways down the hill.
This is quite a ways from where we were up at Monument Street.
Okay, so this is here?
Yes, yep.
Okay, so an hour and a half later, the fire's already down to here. And what do you see happening here?
So you can see especially on this street too, the ember casting was just incredible. So there was a home that was already igniting about 2 homes down. Here's a great example of what we're talking about with the ember storm. This amount of embers with 60 to 80 mile per hour winds. Unfortunately, this is why so many homes were catching on fire, and how this fire had not just one main fire front, but actually multiple different fire fronts, solely because of the winds.
Okay, so this is the house that's burning in that ember shower, and we just looked here at kind of how much landscaping vegetation is kind of surrounding this house. Just going back to that kind of idea that there's kind of no boundary between the urban and wildland fuels. So that burning there is that same house.
All the Christmas lights are still up.
It's so crazy that the power was still on.
Yeah, seriously, it was. I think it's just also just a testament to how fluid this whole situation was here. Yeah,
okay, so this is only, this is 4 hours after you showed up.
Yep, this is 4 hours, and we have, if you can go back to the map view, we have progressed all the way south of Sunset Boulevard. So
we're down here.
We're down here.
Wow. So yeah, in that 4 hours, the fire moved all the way down.
From those canyons all the way down.
All right. Wow. Yeah, just the ember load is just incredible, and I think there's all this talk, all the blame about the firefighters ran out of water, they would have put it out. It's like this is super common for urban fires, in Southern California. This is just what happens. As soon as you've got one house on fire, you got a lot of embers. But once you've got dozens of homes on fire, there's just ember clouds like this everywhere.
Yep.
Okay, so now you've moved over to the Eaton fire?
Yeah, so this is the beginning of the Eaton fire. So this is on Palisades Drive, or Pasadena Drive, my apologies. And that video, I think, just does it justice of just how fast the winds were. If we can kind of rewind there just a little bit, just to kind of see the smoke moving. At one point during this time, when I was outside, I actually had to brace myself against the wind and hold my helmet to my head, my wildland helmet, because the winds were just so strong. They were approaching hurricane force.
Okay, so then we take a break, and now this is Wednesday afternoon in Altadena?
Yes, yep. So this is downtown Altadena when my colleague Jason and I first arrived on scene. And, this video really just, it speaks for itself, unfortunately. So this is on Lake Avenue is where we're at right now, kind of near Mendocino Street.
Okay, so at this point, the ember shower was kind of over, right? You had, the night before, you had, a crazy ember storm.
Yes.
It started all these individual structures on fire, and now these are just, the fire's not spreading as fast now, right? It's just all the stuff that caught on fire before.
Yes, yep. And then other structures that are starting to go up, then it would expose another structure or home, and then that one would go up, and then kind of on from there.
Okay, but at this point, the fire spread more by radiant heat and less by embers.
Yep, exactly. Okay. You can tell by the trees, too, how the winds have kind of started to calm down.
Well, and you can see the wind damage on those palm trees over there.
Yes.
Just how... I've been hearing that from people, that the wind damage was insane.
Yes, yeah. I saw so many trees down, not from the fire, but actually just
check
the wind.
It out. That sign is leaning.
Yes, yeah. There were signs all over the place that actually that fell.
And a lot of the signs are engineered for 100-mile-an-hour wind.
Yes.
Oh. And so what was going on with the firefight here? Was there any order to it, or is just there's just too much going on?
There's just so much going on. As you saw earlier in the video, a fire truck was driving past going down, and this was well before any out-of-state resources were able to come in and help out with the local resources. So all these guys were just so overwhelmed, and they were still having to evacuate people. And you can see so many residents are just driving up and down the street, either trying to get back to their home to get other belongings or evacuating. It was very chaotic. A lot of people on bikes too. Mm-hmm. That's what I've noticed. A lot of people on bicycles riding around.
Right, and I know we said 2 nights ago when we were talking about mental health that like it's not good for you to watch too much of this. So like this video is just going to keep going like this. So if you don't really feel like you need to see more
Yes.
burning homes and burning towns, we're trying to talk a bit about just the mechanics of things here, but it's going to continue like this for another 10 or 15 minutes. So if you feel like you don't need to see any more of this, you're not going to miss much if you cut out, and we won't blame anyone for dropping off the stream.
Yes, yeah. Mental health over anything else.
So at the time, you're just kind of amped here, right? Like you're not really feeling it. Is that, you think you're just?
It was. I was just so in shock of what was actually happening. I was just, like these other firefighters that are out here. You have a job to do, and my job is really to, what you're seeing is it's to document this, to see what happened in real time, and it's just such a helpless feeling because there's just nothing really you can do, and even these firefighters are trying their hardest, but even then it's just when a building goes up like this, there's not much else you can do. Yeah, it personally, it's one thing to document a fire that's torching off acres of forest and brush, middle of nowhere, but both of these fires at one point, their main vegetation type was homes, buildings, apartments. That was really the most unfortunate thing, is that these winds just push these fires straight into really highly populated areas.
So if you're just joining us, my guest is Michael Steinberg. These are videos he shot last week as a reporter for WatchDuty and as a pyrogeographer. And we're just looking at these and talking about kind of what we're seeing, with how the embers spread the fire all over, and then how without any like real way to build a strategy, that there's no way to stop this fire just because it's so many individual events happening.
Yeah, all those homes that were down that street were destroyed as well. It got to the point in Altadena where every street that I looked down, all I could see was just rubble.
Mm-hmm. Right, and this is just like 12 hours after it kind of...
Yes,
really, so it kind of moved in after like 9:30 or 10?
Yes, yeah, and then it kept on going, really.
And you guys were there before, like the night before you were there before it really ran into town?
Yes, yeah.
Like at
so
9:30?
it was at that time, the prior night on Tuesday, we were still, it was still in, the residential areas closer to the hills, but, at this point we were miles away from.
Let's just look at the map real quick.
Yeah,
So
let's pull it up.
And I got a really squeaky chair here, so if you wonder if I'm just farting the whole time, it's actually my squeaky chair, I promise. Okay, so here's the Altadena fire, and we'll color it real quick for you, so you don't have to squint as hard as we are. Dang. Those tacos.
There we go.
All right. I don't know where we are.
That's that's the Arrow fire, I think.
Arrow. Yeah. Oh well, yeah, because they reset the virus stuff. We got. We know that there's nothing more boring than watching someone else drive a computer, but that's what you get with a live stream.
Especially for a pyrogeographer live stream.
Yeah, there will be maps. Okay, so where are you at here in this imagery?
So we are right along Lake Avenue, right up around, where the cursor is. So, pretty much right up in there, all downtown. And as you can see with all these little fingers, and look at these spot fires even further down, all up in that area, shows just how much the winds were impacting this.
So you're 1.5 miles from the vegetation, basically.
Yep, 1.5 miles. Yep.
Right, so, the theme for tonight's broadcast is just, what is the WUI, really? Like, wildland urban interface. Traditionally, in a lot of places, you think of the WUI as, when we define the WUI for fire planning, we'll take the urban area and then we'll put like a mile buffer on it or something, and we'll say like, okay, well, everything within a mile of urban areas is the urban interface. But I think what you see here is that the urban interface it can go anywhere, right? With enough wind, every street tree and doghouse and garden shed becomes part of what we call the fuel model. We're going to speed up a little here just because there's a lot to see.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with this experience of documenting these fires and what you were talking about with how far the wildland urban interface can extend, that was probably the biggest eye opener for me. Was I knew in theory, through classes with my professors about how far and how homes can become part of that fuel model, but to actually see it happen to this extreme for not just one fire but two fires in a given spatial area, that was the most shocking.
Right, and even now you still have embers. Like we're still seeing like these embers bouncing
Yep.
towards you guys. The peak was the night before, but sorry, I'm gonna have to slow it down. It's a little too crazy. Yeah. Giant steps.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, you can see kind of, the updraft of smoke coming from all these burning buildings, and that is another way for all these embers to spot, maybe 200 feet, 300 feet. That'll get into another yard, and then that yard, maybe it's not that maintained, and then that yard starts to go, and then the next one goes.
Yeah, those big chunks
Yep.
there.
Yep. Yeah, you can see it all flying up there. So yeah, this was an apartment complex, and
How close was this to where we just were?
this was maybe not even a quarter mile up the road.
Yeah, and so you see this landscaping, burning. I think the thing that we forget about is that it's nice and green up here in Northern California, but down there, anything that's not irrigated hasn't been rained on since April, and a lot of landscaping isn't as flammable as there's a lot of variety in the flammability of landscaping plants, but when any plant that's been sitting out with no natural precip for 8 months becomes more and more flammable. And all those down power lines.
Oh, there were so many down power lines everywhere. The overhead hazards were out the wazoo, let's just say that. Safety officer's nightmare. So we're further up the road, kind of looking back now towards downtown Altadena. So that's the Bunny Museum right there. You can see on the left. I didn't even know that existed until after this video was taken, because I was just so focused on everything else that was going on. So yeah, these guys were coming in to try and at least knock down those flames.
Did they still have some water, or what was going on with the water situation?
Yeah, I mean, they were just trying to get as many water tenders as they could, but really not many hydrants were there. And the big thing, as what Zeke talked about earlier, with why didn't they use the fire hydrants? Why are these fire hydrants going out? Like, fire hydrants really can't hold this sort of catastrophe that happens. They're meant for like a home or a couple homes or maybe a block to go, but to have a whole downtown area pretty much go up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw some interesting math on that yesterday. I put it up on Twitter. Kind of retired fire chief talking about the water needs to support 100 strike teams of engines. He said would use something like 36 million gallons a day or something.
So yeah, these are some neighborhoods.
Do you know where this is? Like what the address is?
It was north of Altadena Drive. Oh, this woman, yeah. So yeah, so this woman and her husband, they were trying to save their home, and she came, as you saw, running to me out of breath, and so yeah, I let these guys know for yeah. So yeah, I mean, you can see like look at all these overhead power lines. I mean, if you're in a big fire engine, Type 1 engine, trying to defend these homes, I mean, there's only so much you can do because who knows? These could still be live, these could be dead, but you just don't know. And then this tree that you'll see when I kind of pan back eventually, that was actually down from the wind.
Mm-hmm.
It was the wind that actually took down that big tree.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can see all that vegetation, that hedge just right up against this home as well. They were looking to try and save this one, but at that point it was just too hot. Too hot of a fire. So yeah, there's that tree.
Hmm.
Yep, nothing but really chimneys left.
Wow.
Yeah, and especially with, when houses are starting to get fully engulfed in buildings too, a lot of the water just gets evaporated before it even does much.
Right. Do you know like what street this is on?
Gosh, if you pull up the maps, I think I can figure it out. So we are Lake Altadena. I think it's Palm Street. We're at Palm Street, so right there to the left. But do you see Pine?
There.
Yeah, right there. So really, those first couple of homes there on the right.
Here?
Yeah, right there. Yep. We can go a little street view action there. Whew. Yep.
Yeah. So what's the geographer here see? We see these palm trees that have like tons of kind of dry fronds. This is the gate that they were just trying to open, right?
Yep.
You got this eucalyptus tree that blew down.
Yep.
Super flammable.
Super flammable. It's like, I mean, that's just practically living in the mountains at this point.
Yeah.
Just because of how dense all this ornamental vegetation is.
Okay, and then all these homes over here were lost.
Yep, all these homes here.
You got these cypress that are really flammable.
Big tree right there.
And then these palm fronds are just notorious for casting, like, when they're dry, they cast tons of embers.
Oh, yeah.
But it's interesting. So you look at these houses and, like, if you were doing kind of a defensible space inspection, nice green lawn, like, these bushes, they're all pruned up. Like, you wouldn't look at this and think, like, critical wildfire hazard, critical exposure to risk. But I think one other thing I see here is older housing, right? And shake roof right there, that, like...
Oh, yeah.
Shake roof is like notorious for taking houses out. Just embers land on that and the house is gone.
And they get underneath too.
And older homes just, like if you, I don't know if we can zoom in here, but the eaves are really susceptible to rot. So like as far as weak points, 715 East Palm, we're going to try to jump to a little better map here. Just if you're thinking of like hardening your home, the roof edges where a ton of fires start, either from stuff getting in the gutters or just they're prone to rot. And then when you have rot, and you can see kind of moss along the edge here, the rot is just like this Velcro for embers. And embers, if they're flying and they hit kind of rotten wood, they just stick to it. It's really strange, but that's kind of the way it works. And so like in Paradise, after the fire driving around up there, like if you checked out the homes that survived, they were the ones that looked like this. They were, neat and tidy, new paint, tight roof corners. Like just everyday maintenance of homes makes a huge difference in their susceptibility to the embers and their survivability.
So yeah, even that home that you showed just now about kind of what they look like. I mean, that's that one right there.
Wow.
The blue with the blue paint.
And look at this, like the yard has got like it's bare dirt.
If we go back, yeah, keep going around. There we go. Yep, that one, that blue one right there.
This one here.
Yep, that's the one.
But they do have this line of junipers right up to the edge of their house.
And who knows what it's like back behind too. I mean, the way those trees look.
Doesn't feel fair to be kind of like judging the winners and losers in reverse.
Yeah.
But you just see this continuity of vegetation, right? Like we do fire behavior modeling, and we run models, and like it'll show the fire jumping through these almost continuous corridors here of vegetation in people's backyards, like almost seamless. Tegan Lee's saying there's public health advantages to trees and greenery. Is there a way to balance those factors with fire safe landscaping, or do we have to choose? A lot of trees, sycamores, oaks, there's a lot of trees that are good shade trees that are not highly flammable. And also watering your trees can help kind of keep them from going into dormancy.
There's a really good book that one of the professors at Chico State recently published. It's called Firescaping the WI. So I'd recommend looking at that. And
that's by Rachel Schleicher?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And Professor Edwards. So I definitely recommend taking a look at that. There's some very good information in that book.
But I think it points out this conundrum of, living in places that do have the Santa Ana. Not all communities are going to be faced with this threat, with the threat of these extreme kind of dry winds that come in times of year that don't have rain. But there are plenty of communities that do have that exposure. This guy's got like a Tupperware.
Yeah, so that's the husband of the woman that ran up to us. So yeah, I'm talking to my colleague that I'm going to run back there and let him know, because the end of Palm Street on the other side was clear, so that maybe they could get an engine in or something to help kind of calm things down on that other home that was burning. So I'm running up to the safety officer here. It's intense.
Yeah.
Intense stuff. Oh, yeah. So this is a resident here who actually came up and was taking photos of this home. I think he already lost his home further back.
And then he runs back and grabs a bike.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. So there's that safety officer coming in, so I'm running up to him to point him out where exactly the home is, all these hanging power lines. So yep, there they are. So yeah, they were doing like that couple, they were doing a kind of a small bucket brigade from the pool that they have.
Wow, fire all around them.
Yep.
And their house is just in the middle of bushes.
Right. So if we're thinking, say the winds didn't calm down, I mean that home there probably wouldn't survive. Think about all that hedgerow on the right, and then those homes, because the wind was coming in from this direction.
Did their place survive?
I don't know. I don't know.
Back on this one that we're just looking at, you've got kind of modern construction on that one house that was next to the other one, but We'll see. I wonder if we'll see back that way.
I think we will. Yeah. Most of the people that I saw here, I mean, of course, pretty much everyone was just in a daze.
Yeah.
They were just so yeah, so he was running back. He was just like, "Oh my God, it's still standing." That's what he said, and he's running. And a garage in this house was actually still there. And so he runs in
Gets his
and
bike.
gets his bike. I had no idea what he's doing. I was about to say, "Hey, like you shouldn't go there," but then he was already gone and I was just like, "Well, there must be something there that he really needs."
Yeah.
And so yeah, he gets a bike.
Dang.
And he rides it back to his little van that he has.
Dang. With car seat on it, kid seat.
Kid seat, and you saw a pink helmet fly off from it.
Jesus.
Yep.
I just want to go back to
Yeah. That house there, yeah.
Yeah.
Right there.
So here, just you've got this house here that's got modern. So we talk a lot about the new building codes of Chapter 7 of the California Building Code that was adopted after 2007, that requires fireproof siding and fire-resistant windows. There's a lot of different new standards in 2007 for more fire-resistant construction. But this house is on fire, even with all that new code. And if we look at our street view again, these guys have got everything going on that the new code requires. That includes soffits, the different screens on the vents, fire-rated windows. That's all required by the building code. But in the campfire, what they found was that the single most predictive factor of whether or not your home would survive in the campfire was whether or not it was within 60 feet of another home that burned. And so you can see that this house caught on fire, and then it's catching this house on fire.
Yeah.
And pretty much, if your house is anywhere near another house that's on fire and there's no firefighters there, your house will not stay standing. Eventually, the windows will crack, embers will get inside, or just stuff.
Except for that one home that was truly fire hardened back in Pacific Palisades. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we showed that photo in a previous live stream.
All right, so we're just going to go through some stills real quick and just kind of revisit, just kind of wrap up the what we saw in these videos. So this first image, we talked about how the continuity between the landscaping, wood fences, and the home is a recipe for ignition.
All Christmas lights still up on the roof there.
What's going on here? This is another one we looked at, just where that adjacent home caught on fire, and within minutes, the home next to it caught on fire. There was really no separation between the two, and the landscaping here is also, on fire and spreading fire to the house.
And you can see again those embers that are up in the roof, up in the gutter, as well.
I'm gonna do this again. This is the Ember Storm house?
Yes, yep. So that's the mansion that went up on what was that street again? I forget.
Yeah, well, on this one you can just see this was the one that had just crazy heavy
Embers, yeah.
landscaping. This one is the one of the photos you sent me when you were out there. This is the one that kind of just struck me, is because it's such a beautiful, classic California bungalow, right? With,
yep.
The landscaping was beautiful. You'd look at this and it just looks like what we think a California landscape should look like, right? Sunset Magazine. This is the California aesthetic, right? This is the classic bungalow on the coast, which turns out to be highly not fire resilient, right? We talked about the roof edge and how the roof edge is kind of the most susceptible to to the amber intrusion, both getting in through the vents and the corners of the eaves. Nice gate there.
Yeah, no, this was off Amalfi Drive, I believe, in Sunset, and yeah, I mean, I think this photo just kind of goes to show how many of these homes burned down. Is it really started from the roof, and then into the attic, and firefighters were trying to protect this home, but once they saw that the fire had gone into the attic space and spread to the further right of the home, they just gave up. They were just like, there's no point anymore at this point.
So I'm not getting the whole slideshow thing to work.
That's interesting.
There we go.
So
Got
this
the
was
wood mulch.
So this was up on Monument Street back again, where kind of my first initial documentation of the Palisades fire happened. And yeah, I mean, I took this photo just real quick, just to see how many of these spot fires start and where they start. So yeah, that's all mulch in there, and then you can see the home right up against it, further to the right with the wood fence. So that's right up against that wood fence, and then eventually that would all catch on fire, and then it would spread to the home. And then this was back in Altadena. See all the down power lines.
And these sycamore are just most conifers are really flammable. One thing we talk about on here quite a bit is just that there's this popularity of deer-resistant plants. And you go shopping at a nursery, and often you'll see like, oh, the rosemary is deer-resistant. The lavender is deer-resistant. And the reason that the animals don't like it is because it tastes bitter. And the reason it tastes bitter is because the plant puts a lot of its growing energy into producing these kind of phenolic compounds, like sappy kind of, almost like gasoline, and those are a natural defense the plant has against herbivory. And so there's kind of different strategies that plants take to survive being browsed on by critters. Some plants, like alder, they just, when they sprout back after a fire, they put out lots of different sprouts, and that's their strategy. Is that so they put their energy into growing fast after a disturbance. But other plants like spruce or pine or a lot of these conifers, they grow a lot slower because they're putting a lot of their energy into these defenses against browsing. So just about any time you hear that a plant is resistant to browse or deer-resistant vegetation, it means it's going to be more flammable. And so it's good to steer clear of those. Better look at this one.
So this was Wednesday morning in Pacific Palisades again. So we came back that morning to kind of see what the aftermath was, and this was on Iliff Street, pretty much right before you get into downtown Pacific Palisades. And I mean, it was just row upon row upon row of just destroyed homes.
You see this aluminum here.
Yep.
That's run out from the cars. That happens when cars burn. It's not proof of space lasers.
Direct energy weapons.
There's no direct energy weapons involved here.
So yeah, I took this looking kind of down, so south on Lake Avenue and Altadena Drive, and I just took this photo. I mean, this car just kind of drove through all that just to escape, and to the left of me is where that gas station kind of burned out. Kind of surprised it didn't blow up, but here's that home again off of Palm Street.
Yeah, you can see the fire kind of burning in the mulch.
Yep.
Yeah, so wood mulch is bad. The main reason wood mulch is bad is it catches embers, and then it starts lots of small fires, and they spread really slowly. They can take, like an hour to spread from one side of the garden to the other, but they do spread and they keep going. And so oftentimes, like, we see that the fire front moved through here hours before, but there's still homes catching on fire and burning, and a lot of that is just that the wood mulch kind of acts as an incubator. Wood chips, wood mulch, they act as this kind of place that the fire can kind of just hold off. So oftentimes firefighters come through with the initial wave of fire. They think everything's good, and then they leave, and then hours later the mulch catches the cypress on fire, the juniper on fire, catches the fence on fire.
Yep.
And little things like that are what burn down homes. A lot of these places, if people could have stayed and had a garden hose, they would have been able to save their house. But there's this kind of it's a complicated topic of shelter in place. Oftentimes, if your home is safe enough that you can stay there, you can save it with a garden hose. But unfortunately, a lot of folks stay, and then when they look out the door and it looks like this, they're not prepared and they freak out and they leave at the last minute, and it causes massive problems with firefighters.
Yeah.
So that whole shelter in place, stay and defend, is pretty fraught, right? And it's a tough thing for us to talk about because there's good arguments on both sides. But a lot of people just aren't prepared. They don't have the experience or the clothing or the resources to stay and defend their home. But oftentimes, if you have gotten fire training, if you've got a pump, if you've got protective gear, respirator, everything. So there's a lot of good reasons to get involved with, say, like prescribed burning and to improve your firefighting literacy, because you might be able to stay and defend. So we don't recommend that normal people stay and defend, but if someone's got a ton of skills with fire, with pumps, with all that stuff, it's I would never say that nobody should stay and defend their house, because a lot of us have the experience to do it. The main problem is that people who don't have that experience then be in the way, and then they need to be evacuated, and then they are a drain on resources right when those resources are needed critically for other things.
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate thing with the Palisades fire is that it was such a fluid situation, and there were so many calls of what Zeke was talking about, with people trying to stay and defend, but then having to be helped with evacuating that. And my colleague and I's area that we were staying around, which was Monument Street, unfortunately, we actually had to take action and help evacuate people and tell people to evacuate. There were two people that were trying to defend their home, but like their sister, like this, it was his father and son, and the father's sister was there trying to basically let him know, like, hey, it's time to go, and they just weren't there listening. So we had to go out and yell for them to, like, get out, like, you got to go. Homes are burning literally down the street. And then like 10 minutes later, we were coming down, and this was by the time when things were getting really smoked out. It was very hard to see, but there's a light that kind of caught my eye, and it was this elderly woman trying to defend her home with a garden hose with no water pressure. And she was just so disoriented from the whole situation that we finally got her to get into her car, and we let her down to safety. Mm. So, I mean, that was it. And again, no firefighters were there, no police officers, because there was just so much that was happening.
So talk about this house here.
Yeah, so this was on Iliff Street, as I talked about, kind of the area that we were at. This home actually was the only one that survived on this street. And this is what we would call perfectly to a fire-hardened home. You can see there are no overhanging eaves. There's very little vegetation. There's actually what looks like some rockscaping in that side area around the garage, mm-hmm. and the closed gutter system. And I mean, another thing too is if you actually look closely at the windows, there are no curtains that are right up against the windows. So a lot of times too, with that radiant heat from, say, other burning vegetation or brush, if you have curtains right up against the window, those would actually ignite, and then that would ignite stuff inside your living room. So that's another important factor of making sure you don't have your curtains right up against the window.
So it's like some sort of concrete that's made to look like wood?
Yeah, I believe so, or it's wood with like kind of fireproofing on it. And you can see too that closed vent right there. So closed vent systems as well. That's another very important thing. I believe it's the left window area. I don't know, like up there.
Oh, here.
Or something. Yeah, right in there. And then as you see in the window at the bottom area, this was, you don't see those curtains. And if we go back to the left there, I mean, what we were talking about with the melted aluminum from that car, that was that home. Dang. Completely burned, and it's right up against this house.
Where is this at?
I believe it's 750 Iliff Street. Let me go up there, yeah. But I think this address is going to be kind of burned into memory at this point. because I was just so surprised at seeing this home still standing. Flying back.
Ilif?
Yeah, it's like IL. Yeah, exactly. So. Oh, no, we're going back to Altadena.
Oh, it's in Palisades?
Yeah, it's in Palisades. Yeah,
Okay.
This was in Palisades. This was like just off of Sunset Boulevard.
Got it. Sorry for the jumping around here.
Yep. So it'd be further down, yep, kind of on that street right there.
Right
Yep.
here. So where was it?
It was about kind of between Sunset and, yeah, I'd drop our little guy right there. It'd be on the right-hand side for us if we're looking that way. And, oh, I think it's further down, yeah. But again, you can see, like, look at all this vegetation just right up against these homes. I think it was, when this was taken, I think this home was actually still under construction. Yep, there it is. So we can get a kind of good visual of how close. I mean, look how close that is.
Yeah.
And think about, again, with all that radiant heat right up against this house, and this house, you know, completely, it survived.
Sorry, jumping all over the place here.
Back, yeah.
Wow. More carnage.
Yeah.
More carnage. So you went back to it?
Yep, yeah. So thank you. A big shout out to my friend Matthew Capucci, who's a meteorologist for my radar. I wish I could have gotten some better photos. I only took that one that you showed on your previous live stream last week, but he got some amazing photos to show how the home survived.
Yeah. Wow. So in the bigger picture, where we're talking about here, this is actually this is in the area that we were talking about. Where I was saying that it would be good to turn this whole area here into a park. Right, this whole neighborhood's burned. Because even though we are talking about like embers flying and the impossibility of like keeping fire out of town, like that doesn't mean that these places here aren't at risk at other times of the year that aren't just Santa Ana, right? Like with people down below, you know, and no way to maintain the vegetation below these places. This is still just kind of a loser prospect for ever being fire resilient. You know, so we said in the broadcast last night, as far as we were talking about fuels management, like, hey, since this is all burned to the ground, I mean, now we know, like, Ilif, like, I was going to say, a good thing that house isn't here because it would interfere with my my plan of bulldozing this all and turning it into a beautiful
Nice park.
cliffside park.
Yes.
All right. Well, that was a lot of carnage, man.
It was a lot.
That was a lot of carnage.
a lot.
So, what do we, like, where do we go from there? That's a lot, dude.
Yeah.
You're in it.
You know you're in it when you're really the only one there and there's no firefighters, no law enforcement, no nothing. But, you know, risk I'm willing to take to be able to not just report on this back to WatchDuty, but to put it on my socials for people to see what it's actually like in these urban conflagrations, these firestorms.
So what do you want to do as a pyrogeographer? What are you thinking that is going to be the thing you do with it?
Hopefully, you know, find ways in which we can create change that are better for not only, you know, individuals but communities. I'm working on something that I'm excited about. Hopefully, I can kind of publicly announce it a little bit later, but it's still in the works. But it's something that a lot of people are excited about. I'm excited about, and you know, we as you said previously, we really need to think outside the box for solutions to this problem that we're going to have to find a way to live with, because we have built our way into it, we've suppressed our way into it, and now we're at this time where we just really need to find a way to be more resilient.
I was just going to share something. My buddy AJ, wanted me to talk about this. We're going to go to the Oakland Hills. There's a lot of discussion going on in the wildland world right now about this exact topic of mitigation, and my buddy AJ wanted me to come in here and talk about the tunnel fire in the Oakland Hills and what that landscape has done as far as if you look at the last 30 years of vegetation change. So I'm just going to queue up something here. I want to pull up the tunnel fire.
Yeah, a lot of people have kind of asked me, what was this fire closest to? And honestly, this was probably the closest. I mean, of course, I wasn't alive back then, but, just from the way how it quickly transitioned into mostly residential structures burning as its main vegetation type,
Yeah, so this is the tunnel fire. We're in Oakland Hills. This is where the tunnel, the fire's named after, comes through from Orinda, Highway 24, comes into the Oakland Hills. And this footprint here is only 1,600 acres, pretty small by wildland fire standards, but incredible density of homes that were burnt there. And so we're just going to look at, come in and look at the vegetation here. And then I was just going to go back here and look at the historic imagery. So if we look at 2024, let's go back to, here's 1985. Is it going to come up for us or not? 1993. So this is after the fire. You see all those vacant lots. The fire was 91, wasn't it?
Yes, sure. 91, yep.
So we see that after the tunnel fire, landscape was pretty much denuded. 93. 2002, pretty much all rebuilt 9 years after the fire. And already the vegetation is coming in gangbusters.
More.
2004, it just keeps growing, right? The vegetation keeps growing. And you get to now, and
again, you can see that continuous kind of strip of ornamental vegetation just everywhere.
Right. And we've got, defensible space ordinances in place that are supposed to regulate, how people manage the vegetation. And but when you come in, just from any perspective, really, this is
wow.
And during the tunnel fire, a lot of people died in their cars, right? And then you look at this and you see why. It's just imagine trying to drive up in here with a fire engine.
Yep.
During a fire and having everyone and their cousin coming out at the same time, and then you got it's just it's a nightmare.
And if we go back to that street view imagery of Pacific Palisades, I mean it looks very similar to this.
Right.
Very similar.
Yeah. And here's the Amazon truck. Hope you don't meet that, when you're coming in your fire truck.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I think, this whole insurance crisis in context, who would want to insure this place? If you know the history, I feel we talk about kind of using science to support good decisions, good public policy and everything. But the only people really that are able to do that and get away with it are the insurance companies. They're using the best available science, and none of us like none of us like the answer, right? But smart folks are using the mapping and the data and the modeling and all the tools of a pyrogeographer basically to decide that these places are really not insurable. So oftentimes I think we hear about vegetation management and people say we need to use the best available science to make good decisions. It's well, that's what the insurance industry is doing. And we don't like what we hear, but that doesn't mean that that we can blame the insurance companies for bailing, because they are doing what's right from a business perspective. They're not a charity, so it's kind of hard for me as someone who feels this stuff all the time to see everyone who can't get insurance who lives in a place like this as a victim, truly. But I think our aim with a lot of this as pyrogeographers is to increase people's literacy, so people aren't caught off guard. So people don't just move here and then a few years later find out that it's actually a terrible place to live from a fire perspective. Because until we get to a point where the public in general knows these things, we're not going to be making good policies. The politicians can't tell the truth because they'll get unelected. If I'm the city councilor here and say like, oh yeah, man, this place is screwed, like you should all move. Like, no, I'm not going to get reelected, right? And so the same thing though goes with rebuilding. Is that we didn't think at all before we rebuilt the tunnel fire. But when you look back here at 1991, like this is your opportunity to reimagine the built landscape. Like right now, when there's like 0 homes out here, this is the opportunity. Like I said before, buy it all and come up with a new footprint that makes sense. What would that footprint look like? Well, one thing we saw last night looking at the Summit neighborhood is that they thought about this stuff. Someone asked me the other day, like, why did the Summit neighborhood survive as well as it did? This was being built here in 93. 97 was when we got the new building standards. But when you look at it now, like if you look over here on the edge of town, there's all these little like easement roads here that are put in for the sole purpose of maintaining, like cutting brush, right? And it's physically possible to do that because the landscape is built for that. And you've got like the houses are set back from the edge. The swimming pools are used to good advantage to kind of create a disruption between the vegetation and the home. Like someone talked to the fire people. Here you got tennis courts that are like part of kind of the break in the vegetation.
Interesting.
And you've got these, avocado orchard and roads in here to where you can actually like make access to get in there with a chipper or something and actually like cut the brush. And if you compare that to like older portions of Pacific Palisades, there was no consideration for that kind of access. So these places over here, it's really difficult to get in there and do the work. Say like right in here, if you want to come down here and cut brush below this house, it's like, well, how do you do that? Like, can you even get your neighbor to agree to let you like drag brush out through their sliver of the parcel? So I'll be curious if we learn anything, if we rebuild different. I wanted to share one other place, which is burned in the cedar fire. We're gonna have to.
I think that was when was that? 2007?
2003.
2003. So I was 1 year old.
Yeah, so I went down to the Cedar Fire in 2003 to make maps for George Bush. It was an interesting assignment. Scripps Ranch, that's what we're looking for. So Scripps Ranch burnt in a big way in the Cedar Fire, 2003. It wasn't even close. This whole neighborhood got impacted pretty hard in the 2003 fires. And so if you look at our fire history layer, this is a Cedar Fire here, and it burned this neighborhood. And the tough thing about this particular neighborhood is that a lot of the homes are like built right up on the edge of the canyon. And the lots are so skinny that there's nowhere to build on the lot that isn't like right on the edge of the canyon. And so all these homes here got rebuilt after the Cedar Fire. What you see here is that they've been really aggressive about vegetation management here because they learned the hard way. But if you go back to like 2002, well, they had pretty good clearance then too. But even so, they lost like a ton of homes here. Like this is the This is Scripps Ranch. Doesn't seem right. Let's see. Yeah, I see a lot of vacant lots out here. Like
That's
here,
further down, yeah.
yeah, these all got cooked by the cedar fire. This whole part of the neighborhood here. But like we were saying in Palisades, like here it was physically impossible to move the homes back from the edge of the cliff.
And then, yeah, even compared to that other area of the neighborhood, there's not as much clearance.
So we end up rebuilding a lot of these really high-risk places. But that whole neighborhood design thing is important. Anyway, lots of examples. It's time to wrap it up, I guess.
When you get two pyrogeographers together, you can talk
Pull out the
all
map.
this. Yeah. Talk about this for hours.
All right. Well, we'll keep doing this stuff. I appreciate you bringing your imagery and taking your time and your energy and exposing your emotional body to that crazy shit. And I'm glad you did. I'm glad you're sharing it with us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I think it's very important to not only just document this, but to talk about it, and especially talk about, as what you said, the mental health, effects of, being a firefighter there, a law enforcement officer, or, like me, photographer or videographer.
Or just that guy who went to get his bike, right?
Or that guy to get his bike, or doing whatever else.
I'm glad he got his bike.
It's the small things. It's really important. That bike could be the only thing that he has left. You never know.
If I only was going to have one thing left, I'd be stoked if it's my bike.
As any other person in Chico would, I think.
Yeah. And, if you're evacuated and don't know what to do, if you can go on a bike ride. Stuff like that.
Take care of your mental health. That's the biggest thing.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for coming. And thank you, Michael Steinberg.
Yep, thank you.
See you guys.